Thank you, and welcome to my lecture recital. I'd like to thank you all for coming. Today, I will be discussing with you a piece of music that I wrote for my dissertation. It is a piano sonata called On the History of Secrecy. The piece is 5 movements long, and each of the 5 movements is in its own local and traditional form. The piece is also programmatic, as the title suggests. Each of the movements is based on an instant in history in which secrecy played an important role. It is also cyclic in nature. The same cyclic theme comes back throughout all 5 movements, along with the same motives and in some cases the same passageway. A little background as to why I wrote this piece. After the housing bubble popped in 2008, the federal government bailed out the banks to the initial tune of $700 billion. I remember seeing a congressional debate on C-SPAN where, according to the press secretary of the Treasury Department, the number $700 billion wasn't based on any calculation, they just needed to come up with a really big number. And yeah, I also remember reading an article where a congresswoman from California said that of the 2,000 emails and phone calls that she received regarding the bailing out of the banks, 95% of them were all in staunch opposition, and yet she, along with the rest of Congress, bailed out the banks. So, begged the question, who really is in control of our government, if not the constituents? So this led me to look into various organizations and institutions of influence, including groups like the Council on Foreign Relations, the Trilateral Commission, the Bavarian Illuminati, the Freemasons, the Skull and Bones at Yale, and even the ancient mystery schools of Babylon. And this led me to a conclusion that all of these organizations, at one point or another, have played an important role in shaping the world's events. And they do so because they enjoy an incredible amount of secrecy from public scrutiny, which led me to my last conclusion, that secrecy plays an incredibly important role in shaping the world's events. So why not set it to music? Secrecy plays an important role. And so, in order to set this to music, I decided to reject the idea of telling a story, because I don't think telling a story through the music it'd be too complicated. I didn't think it would work all that well. Instead, I wanted to tell a musical narrative using traditional forms whereby the institutions and events throughout history could be musically portrayed through either a musical quotation or compositional development, compositional techniques. This led to a 5-movement piano sonata that is approximately 30 to 35 minutes, depending on how fast one wants to take it. And because it's such a long piece, I decided to construct it in such a way that it would be most accessible to pianists to be able to program it on a concert. So the 5-movement piano sonata can be seen as the 3 inner movements, all when played back to back. The 3 inner movements create a large 3-movement-in-1 sonata rondo form. So if someone wanted to, they could program just those 3 movements. That's what I'm doing today. Also, the last movement and the first movement can either be programmed separately, or they can be programmed together as a pair. The first movement's opening material comes back at the last movement's ending material, so it gives a nice sense of rounded form. Or if someone wanted to be ambitious, they could play all 5 movements. As I said, all of the movements are in their own traditional form. So the first form is a through-composed form. The second movement is in sonata form. The third movement is a rondo. The fourth movement is a scherzo. And the last movement is in strophic form in the style of a nocturne. The first movement is titled Mystics. It is based on the ancient mystery schools of Babylon as discussed by Manly P. Hall in his book, The Lost Keys of Freemasonry. It is through composed. Although I will not perform this piece today, the 5-measure opening of this movement provides all of the material that one needs to know in order to understand the sonata as a whole. So I will be discussing the first 5 measures. Throughout the sonata, there are 3 main motives. Throughout the whole sonata. The first motive is the number 5. Aside from the entire sonata being 5 movements, the opening of the first movement is also 5 measures long. The number 5 is a very important number in the world of Freemasonic philosophy. The opening chord that we hear is actually 5 stacked perfect fifths from the A to the G sharp. The cyclic theme that comes back throughout all of the movements is made up of 5 individual unique pitches. And the mystery chord that I will talk about in a moment right here has a perfect fifth as its shell. The A flat to the respelled E flat as a D sharp is a perfect fifth. The opening stacked fifth perfect harmony represents all that is good in the universe. This comes back throughout the sonata. The cyclic theme, right here, begins on G sharp. It is an important pitch I'll talk about in a moment. But the cyclic theme, although this piece is not a set theory kind of work, it is important to look at the pitch collection, because the pitch collection for the cyclic theme is an 0-1-3-4-8, and every recurring theme or new motive that comes back throughout the entire sonata is based on either a pitch collection that is close to 0-1-3-4-8, like an 0-1-3-4-7, or they are derivatives of that. They are subsets, like an 0-1-3 or an 0-1-3-4. And the last motive that comes back throughout the whole sonata is the mystery chord. It is made up of 2 augmented triads spelled a major seventh apart. The 3 most important pitches throughout the entire sonata are A, E flat, and G sharp. The first movement, the second movement, and the third movement all begin in A. E flat is the beginning key of the left hand in movement 4, and in movement 5, the left hand begins in E flat minor, while the right hand's melody both begins and ends on the pitch A. The G sharp is also important. It is the first pitch in which we hear the cyclic theme. It is also the first key of the exposition proper in movement 2. It is also a major seventh higher than the first pitch that we hear in A. That's important because the 2 most important intervals throughout the entire piece are a tritone and a major seventh. You can see several structural sevenths and tritones in the opening 5 measures of the piece. From the A to the G sharp, that's a seventh, and then we have a few structural tritones from the A to the last pitch of the cyclic theme, the E flat, and also the lowest pitch A to the highest pitch D sharp, which is another structural tritone. I will now play for you the opening of movement 1. The second movement, the passage of time, is in sonata form. It is based on the historic link between the Freemasons and the Knights Templar. It is in sonata form, and after a short introduction beginning in A, the main theme begins in the key of G sharp minor, an instance in which a major seventh is replacing the octave from movement 1. The movement contains 4 main themes: Templar theme 1, Templar theme 2, the Mason theme, and the entire work opens up with the passage theme that we'll talk about in a moment. It is also important to note that Templar's theme 1 and 2 and the Freemason theme are all comprised of the same pitch collection, 0-1-3-4-7. This was done to show the connection, the historic connection, between the 2 organizations. The introduction to movement 1, or movement 2 rather, begins with the passage theme beginning in A, and then what we hear, the clockwork motive. I've called it the clockwork motive simply because it sounds like the tick-tocking of a clock. I will now play for you the introduction to movement 2. After the introduction, in A, the exposition proper begins a major seventh away in the key of G sharp minor. On top of one of many ostinatos in the left hand, the Templar theme 1, comprised of an 01347 pitch collection, you can see here, comes in. You can see a structural tritone between the outer pitches of the theme. This pitch and the presentation of the theme on G sharp is foreshadowed at the end of measure 1 in movement 1. I will now play for you the exposition proper's introduction. The second theme is the Templar theme 2. It is found in the left hand, and it is played underneath Templar theme 1, played more lyrically in the right hand. It is also the recurring theme because, as I mentioned earlier, the inner three movements create a three-movement-in-one sonata rondo form. And so the theme in the left hand is the recurring sonata rondo theme that we hear throughout movements 2, movements 3, and movements 4. Or movement 4. It is the recurring theme. Because it's played in the left hand underneath all of this, it's a little bit challenging to hear. So I will play just the left hand, which is the Templar theme 2, and then I will play it again in its context. The development contains its own theme. It is the Mason theme, and it is comprised of the same pitch collection as both Templar's theme 1 and 2 to show the historic connection between both the Knights Templar and the Freemasons. The development section contains several different subsections, but it always comes back to this presentation. Although every time it comes back, it's slightly more complicated. The ostinato gets a little bit more complex, the right hand becomes a little bit more polyphonic. Right here is the Mason theme. It is centered around A. As the movement began, I will now play for you the beginning of the development section. Another important motive that comes back throughout the entire three-movement sonata rondo is, is the trumpet motive. It sounds like a trumpet is rallying the troops to battle, if you pardon the expression. Here, within the development section of movement 2, we hear the trumpet motive played in the upper register of the right hand on top of the Templar theme 1 in the lower part of the right hand. This is all on top of another left-hand ostinato. I'll just play this for you so you get an understanding as to what the trumpet motive sounds like, because it plays a very important role in the following two movements. The third and final iteration of the Mason theme is played in counterpoint with the Templar theme in the same hand. First in dialogue with each other, and then homophonically. This is to show the two organizations working in tandem with each other. And as we can see, we have a much more complicated form of the Sonata in the left hand. I'm now playing last iteration of the Mason theme found in the development section. It is slightly ambiguous as to where the recapitulation occurs. Templar theme 2 returns before Templar theme 1, and it interrupts the development section. Also, after a little bit more development material after we hear the second Templar theme come back, well, we see the original ostinato from the opening of the exposition proper, but instead of Templar theme 1, we hear many instances of the trumpet motive. The trumpet motive continues for about a page, and the trumpet motive morphs into the Mason theme. Underneath the Mason theme, Templar theme 1 sneaks back in. And so the question is, where does the recapitulation occur? Timothy Jackson has a term that he uses called the recapitulation group. And he says that when the second theme comes back, that is the beginning of the entire recapitulation group. And I think that's a healthy compromise. So I will now play for you what sounds like the return, but we've already been in the return of the recapitulation group. Movement 3 is titled Revolution. It is in rondo form, and it is based on instances from the 18th and 19th century that one could call a revolution. I refer in this movement to the French Revolution, the Constitutional Convention, which can be seen as a revolution against the old system of the Articles of Confederation, and also the Civil War, which was actually seen as a Southern revolution by its contemporaries. Throughout this movement, each of these revolutions is musically portrayed by quotation. However, I have reharmonized all of these familiar tunes to highlight the negative consequences that always come with revolution, regardless as to how noble the cause may have been. The entire rondo movement is ABA, CBA form, where the A section is always the revolution theme that I'll discuss with you, and instances of the cyclic theme, and the B and C couplets are all quotations. The movement begins very violently in the lowest register of the piano, with triple octave A's, and we hear the revolution theme, which is a subset of the original cyclic theme that we heard in the opening of movement 1. There's a few violent outbursts of the mystery chord as well. I'll now play for the opening to the revolution. Throughout this movement are many instances of the trumpet theme in different forms. You can see there are 4 different ways that the trumpet theme has been mutated, so to speak. And so I will now just play for you a few of those examples so you know what you're listening for. These are all trumpet motives found within this movement. The first B section is made up of 3 different subsections. The first subsection is a quotation of the La Marseillaise, which is representing the French Revolution. After this, we hear the Muzak section. This is my take on twisted elevator music. This is representing the masses not really aware as to the fact that there's a revolution going on around them. And after this, we hear the Templar theme 2, or the Sonata Rondo theme, come back. Again, this is also portraying the masses not aware of what's going on. We're in a much brighter mode, and it's much more lyrical. As soon as this last statement is presented, we go right back into the revolution theme. Here is the B section full of quotation. The return of the A section brings back the revolution theme that was heard at the opening of the movement, but this A section also functions as a development. We hear the cyclic theme played in the bass as a sonata. We hear the trumpet motive that we heard from movement 2, and we also hear different permutations of the cyclic theme in the right hand, back and forth between the revolution theme. I will now play for you an excerpt from the second A section. Section C is filled with primarily quotation. After another iteration of La Marseillaise, we get into an original melody, or a little phrase that I wrote. It sounds like a hymn tune with a little gospel swing, so that's right there. It's only 2 measures long. After this, we hear my harmonization of the Battle Hymn of the Republic. This is to, again, represent the Civil War with a little dissonant ostinato underneath. I will now play for you part of section C. The return of the B section is very similar to the B section that came before it. The only difference is that now we are quoting "Hail to the Chief." This is to represent the Articles of Confederation being abolished and having a constitutional republic, which actually established the President of the United States. It has been drastically and violently reharmonized to highlight the fact that ever since day one, presidents have been abusing their power. Here is my quotation of "Hail to the Chief." The last A section is as one would expect in a rondo form. The only difference is it also brings back material from movement 2 because this is a cyclic work. End the Fed. It is the 4th movement and the last movement of the 3-movement-in-1 sonata rondo form. The title is taken from a book written by former Congressman Ron Paul with the same name. When Ron Paul would go on his campaign trail running for president, all of the crowd would be chanting the phrase "End the Fed" over and over again. And that's because Congressman Ron Paul was a champion of trying to reform the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve was created in 1913 by an act of Congress, and yet the Congress is prohibited from conducting a full and open audit of their books. They can't find out what type of money and how much money the Federal Reserve is loaning to foreign corporations and foreign governments, which obviously opens the floodgates for fraud and abuse and corruption. And so it's full of secrecy, and so it belongs in my 5-movement piano sonata. It is in scherzo form, and it contains 2 codas. We begin in E flat minor, or E flat something in the left hand, while we have D minor in the right hand, a major 7th apart. This again is a structural major 7th that we heard in the beginning of movement 1. The right hand and left hand have 2 different functions. The right hand has a brand new theme, which is based off of a subset from the cyclic theme, and it is called the Fed theme. It is also heard consistently throughout the movement in the form of an ostinato, and so it is the Fed ostinato. It is also a tone row, and one really fun property of this tone row is that it is hexachordally combinatorial with itself at a PXRI x-1 level. All that means is that I had a lot more variety and interest in composing the right hand's ostinato. I won't quiz you on the various levels of translation. It also, in my most subtle possible way, begins with the letters FED, or the pitches FED. It is the Federal Reserve and the Fed. There are 2 common permutations that I use throughout the entire movement. It is the P form of the row and the RI form of the row. The P form of the row sounds like this. And the RI form of the row sounds like this. The scherzo contains 2 main subsections. Subsection A, the right hand contains the Fed ostinato throughout the entire subsection. Various transpositional levels, but it's always there. Underneath that, the left hand plays octaves in the left hand, in the bass register, to provide some sense of tonal stability. And we also hear motives and themes that were first heard in movement 2, again, because this is a cyclic work. We hear the passage theme and some instances of the clockwork motive. I'll now play part of the scherzo section for you. The second subsection of the scherzo brings back material that was first heard in movement 3, Revolution. It is actually very similar to the B section of Revolution. We have the Muzak section, only it's played with a lot more tension and anxiety. That is because yet another ostinato is played in the left hand. The left hand ostinato begins with the first 4 pitches of the cyclic theme. After this, similar to the B section in Revolution, we hear the recurring sonata rondo theme, or Templar theme 2, in the left hand. And on top of that, the relentless Fed ostinato, or Fed theme, is played in the upper register in the right hand. Here's example 16. And here's underneath that, example 17. Here is the recurring sonata rondo for theme in the left hand. The trio section is very short. It's very short. It contains just the Fed ostinato played in a dissonant canon between both left hand and right hand. We start at the top of the piano and we work our way down to the bottom depths of the piano. This occurs twice. This is to symbolize the endless debt spiral that America finds itself in thanks to the irresponsible monetary policy of the Federal Reserve. I will now play a short excerpt from the trio section. function of coda 1 is to recapitulate the entire three-movement sonata rondo structure. This example is taken from movement 2's recapitulation. It is the Templar theme 2 in the left hand against a lyrical Templar theme 1 in the right hand, the recurring sonata rondo theme. After this, we go right into coda number 2. Here's coda 1. The second coda serves as both a recapitulation to the whole three-movement sonata rondo, but also to finish off the movement itself as a local ending. We have the return of the fed ostinato, and the fed ostinato morphs into the revolution theme that we heard in movement 3. I'll now play part of coda 2 for you. Movement 4 comes to a conclusion, and thus the conclusion of the three-movement in one sonata rondo form. We finally hear one more instance of the material that opened up movement 2 to begin with, the passage theme and the clockwork motive. Throughout this entire section, the pitches A and E flat are the beginning pitches of both the ostinato in the right hand and the lower pitch in the left hand. And A and E flat are tritone apart, constantly switch back and forth between until finally we get the conclusion of the movement. I'll now play for you the conclusion of movement 4. The last movement is titled Eulogy. It is a eulogy to all of the victims of humanity's travesties. We are in the key of E flat minor, which is a tritone away from which the movement 1 began. And if you'll recall, the opening chord was a perfect fifth harmony, which represented all that is good in the universe with the pitch A as its foundation. We are now the farthest away from all that is good, again, to represent the travesties of humanity. It is in strophic form, and it is also in the style of a nocturne. We begin in the key of E flat minor, but the right hand's melody both begins and ends on the pitch A, a tritone away. Here is the beginning of movement 5. And although I'm not performing this movement, you should at least look at the last few measures. The last few measures end the way the first few measures of movement 1 began, giving a sense of rounded form. The stacked perfect fifth harmony returns, only this time beginning on a C flat with the cyclic theme, again in the key of E flat minor. The piece and the entire sonata comes to a conclusion with E flat in the left hand and a tritone away in the right hand on the pitch A. Here is the last few measures of movement 5. And that's the entire sonata. So I'll now perform for you movements 2, 3, and 4 in the inner sonata rondo.